Welcome to the late morning breakout session. I'm Cameron Cowan. I help run product strategy here at ObservePoint. I'm just hosting this thing. I get to learn along with the rest of you. Today's session, OP Rockstars, ObservePoint Rockstars, is all about the new and innovative and interesting ways in which a number of folks from our partner ecosystem have been using the ObservePoint platform to deliver more value to the customers and clients they work with. They come from services organizations, agencies, technology platforms. I have the great privilege of working with a number of these folks. In my role, I work on especially a lot of the technology integrations we do. So you'll get to hear all about a case study we just released this week with a new integration with one of our technology platform partners, Blink. So we get to just learn from what these folks are doing, take the best they've got, and there will be time for questions. So each presenter will present. You'll have a chance to ask any immediate questions because I'm sure there's going to be some things spinning around. And then at the end, we'll bring everybody back up and you'll have a chance to follow up on anything you pulled out at the end. We all good with that? We're awake. We're ready for this? All right. So first up, I'd like to bring on Lee Evans. Lee, come on up. Lee is the Senior Manager of Digital Experience at Protiviti, but she's a lot more than that. She's got a lot of experience. So we're going to let Lee tell us about herself and then dive into why she's a rock star. Go ahead, Lee.
Okay. I'm Lee Evans. I'm from Protiviti Digital. You might have heard of who owns us, Robert Half. So we are a full subsidiary of Robert Half. And we started out as a financial risk assessment firm, but they grew into digital. And just recently they purchased R2I Integrated. And I kind of came in on the tail end of that. So I lead up the analytics, digital experience, CDP, anything data pretty much comes across to my team. How I've come into this is I am a huge fan of ObservePoint since it first started. Right after, I think, Omniture, you guys sold Omniture, you guys had this idea for ObservePoint. I had the fortunate opportunity to work for an employer that was really into Omniture, so I used to work with Omniture. I used to have a lot of gear from Omniture. Don't know where it is now, but anybody finds those scarves, I think they might be worth something. And then I came back in, I kind of grew into ObservePoint as it started to grow. So from different consulting gigs, different places that I've worked, I've always had to be able to touch ObservePoint. So with that, I just wanted to give you guys an idea how we're using it at Protiviti. What we use it to help diagnose things with clients, but also to create what we call our HUM assessments. And what does HUM stand for? It stands for honesty, usable, and memorable. So what is creating your memorable experiences, keeping them honest and keeping them usable? And how we're able to diagnose those things is if we are using ObservePoint to run an audit of journeys of things that are happening with SEO, things that are happening with links, things that are happening from the performance perspective. Are tags breaking? Are they slowing things down? So one of the first things I want to show you is I absolutely love the tag initiator. It helps me diagnose a really big problem that I see over and over again with marketing agencies. A lot of times you're working with vendors that are doing your pay-per-click marketing or your display marketing or your social media marketing. And a lot of times they are using tools to build out these campaigns and do this bid management. And what happens is those tools will tag on extra pixels inside a Google floodlight counter. And what happens then is you become out of compliance with CCPA, GDPR, if you're doing any advertising over there. Because with those first tag initiators that you see here, oh, geez, sorry. I went on to retired technology. Nobody stopped me. So this is retired technology here. The next one's my pixel one. Right, retired technology here. This is a tag for DTM. Anybody still using DTM in this room? I think a few Adobe people might want to talk to you a little bit later, okay? So DTM was retired a few years ago. You can't even access it anymore. So this we found for a potential client that we were working with, created a HUM assessment for him, and immediately they're like, oh, we didn't realize who's still managing all of our tags. And it turns out nobody is managing their tags because they can't get to it. So you can see here, it was actually put through a different JavaScript, and then they put down the bootstrap. And now you have all these things that are loading. So this client here, we discovered this for him, and it gave us an opportunity to come in and help them move up to Adobe Launch Data Collection. I say those terms interchangeably. Also, what you could see is the other things that were coming through here off of Bootstrap as well. So they couldn't access any of these tags or change anything with these tags because they couldn't get to DTM. Next one is, this is my piggybacking pixel. And like I said, I find this a lot. Absolutely any client I am going to, I'm surprised these days if I'm not finding it. So what this is you'll see here, Google Tag Manager is putting out your floodlight counter, and then it goes out and you'll see there's Trade Desk, and it goes out to Rubicon. This one over here goes from there's Snapchat, and then there's another one here, HubSpot. That one's okay, but Trade Desk, and then this other one that we couldn't even figure out what it was is Centro in there. So those, and the Index Exchange up there. So with that, this client could not control if someone said, please forget me, or don't control my data. Don't send my data anywhere. I want to keep my data. You need to forget me. It stops at the floodlight counter, and that floodlight counter itself doesn't know those other things are tacked on, because within the pixel, they're shoving in all this other code on the end. And part of the reason we use this to show people about piggybacking pixels is because it's visual, and then they get it because they see these long spidering tendrils coming off of the initiator. So when we get that, then we start getting questions of, hey, how do we control this? What do we need to do? Do I use, something like OneTrust or TrustArc to do that? And problem is, with even if you have OneTrust and you have somebody shoving these pixels down in here, OneTrust can find that and say, hey, this isn't there, but it can't stop this from happening. You have to work with your marketing vendors to tell them you need to stop this. A more common one that you'll see too, very common that I see, is that you'll see Yahoo Analytics being shoved in at the end. I've seen Trade Desk being shoved in. Well, Trade Desk shoved in on the end, but you'll see it like 2 or 3 times more on there. And then my last one, and this is probably my most favorite one that I'm showing you here because I got to work with Cameron on this one. We had a client that their page load time was horrific. Absolutely horrific. And we couldn't figure out why. And one day I started looking at the console and I kept seeing Google Fonts loading. And I'm like, what the heck's going on here? Looked like it was on this infinite loop. And so I worked with Cameron and we did some audits where we would actually block the Google Fonts from not showing or not running when we were running the audit. And it didn't change the performance. And we're like, okay, what's going on? So we started playing with how we could block things and look at specific things within ObservePoint. And we found out that it actually was font tags. But what was happening was the font tags were on a local server. The client did not have a CDN. So this performance wasn't just like, if you were close to the server, you were fine. Like you were getting, okay, it was quick times to load. But the further you were out from this client server, the more horrible the experience became because they were using these fonts. So we identified that for the client, and now they're in the process of changing it. I still don't like going to their page because they still haven't fixed it, and I live far away from their server. So I stay away from their pages. But this kind of shows you here when we were running this, how bad the pages were. And we were picking and choosing different sections. And no matter where we were, we kept finding these pages that were just running really slow. It was because of this font problem. They kept trying to download huge fonts problem. So those are my 3 things I wanted to show you guys. We're also doing a webinar. So if you're interested and you want to come to our webinar, we're having it next week. It's all about analytics and the problems people are using, having, actually getting personalized digital experiences going. So that's on October the 5th. If you want, you can email me. I'll send you a link, or take a picture of it. You type in the URL. So it's a free webinar. Okay, that's all I got.
Awesome. Thanks, Lee. We're going to swap out for a second. And DTM's a real thing. So we ran an audit of 10,000 websites earlier this year. And of those 10,000 websites, there was like 700 that still had DTM on them. So that's not the only one.
I know.
What you're seeing is unfortunately still happening. All right, one more here for Lee. Thank you so much. We're going to bring up our next rock star, Andy Meadows. Andy is the founder and what are all the things in your title there, Andy? 2 minutes. Okay, so Andy does everything at Blink. If we get Andy's head mic on. Andy and I have had a real great relationship the last several months. Specifically, we've been working, as I mentioned earlier, on a technology partnership between the ObservePoint platform and Blink, which is a technology partner. So actually using some of the things you may have heard in Sam's session yesterday, all about using our API to connect two tools together to get more value than we could otherwise. With that, Andy, I'm going to let you take it away.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So again, my name is Andy Meadows with Blink from Austin, Texas. Glad to be here today. I wanted to talk a little bit about false peaks in marketing, analytics, and compliance. Happen to be the three things that we work with at Blink, and happen to be the three different audiences we have here today. So hopefully some of this will resonate with each of y'all. So real quick, just a quick background for anybody who missed the case study or the presentation or any of the other conversations today. What Blink does, we connect the world through managed, monitored, and measured branded links and QR codes. So what that means is we take the long, ugly yet beautiful links that we all need for attribution and management and privacy and tracking, all those different details, and we compress them down into a beautiful package that's branded with the right analytics and details around it so you get what you need with every single click. So here's a couple of quick examples. But ultimately what we believe in is that we want to make every link the perfect link. So every time that you're touching your audience, we want to make sure that that is the right engagement. So we know that you spend millions of dollars creating an audience and millions of dollars creating the assets and the destinations for them. And we believe that the links themselves are as critical as the destinations. Now, for anybody who's not familiar with the Fall Summit, I don't know, how many hikers did we have yesterday? A few? So if you've ever done any traditional hiking, you know that Fall Summit is essentially when you're looking up at the mountain and you think that that's the peak, and then you climb to that point and you realize it's not the peak. There's actually the next peak, and you get to that part, no, that's not it. It's the next peak. And I find that this is very similar in marketing, compliance, and analytics, because as you're doing these things, the reality is that you think you've got it right, and you get to that point, you realize, no, it's actually not right. There's something I've missed, or something went wrong, something I could have done different and better. And so very similar to false peaks, the key things here, it's significant and discouraging effects. So if you've ever done this for any length of time, realize you can put all your mind and muscle into things, and it doesn't turn out the way that you think it should. And so it can be discouraging. And again, even the feelings of lost hope and failure. So Blink wants to help fix that and help correct the false summits that you have across marketing, analytics, and compliance. So a quick example of this, here's a picture of Guardsman Pass that I took earlier in the summer. My wife will tell you that there are 3 false summits at Guardsman Pass because she reminded me at each one that there was a false summit, that it was not actually the top. But when you get to the top, you get this great view. So it was definitely worth it. But again, that climb, there's a process to that. So just a quick glimpse of what it looks like at the top, and hopefully your view is just as good. So one of the first things we like to talk about in terms of what Blink does, it brings that alignment together. So a few quick stats. So highly aligned organizations see an average of 30%, 32% year-over-year revenue growth. So when your organization is aligned, you're going to grow faster. If you're less aligned, you're going to see a 7% decrease in revenue. So you're going to reduce things because you've got disalignment across the organization. And again, highly aligned companies are 15% more profitable. So more revenue, more profitability, and overall more growth and more satisfaction across the organization. Now, the 3 things, again, that need to be aligned, we need analytics, compliance, and marketing. So these components are critical. And as Blink is touching each of these and bringing all this ObservePoint data together into and across these different organizations so that they're all live in harmony with all the different details. So first, we're going to talk about analytics. So one of the first things that's most important in the analytics side of the world is we need reliable data because that drives the right decisions. Without the right data, we can't make proper educated decisions and have the right output. Second thing is that we need both quantity and quality. We've all heard the adage, it's quality, not quantity. The reality is in analytics, you need both. You need both quality and quantity. And the last is that you need the global framework that levels the playing field across the entire brand, all departments, all organizations. Everybody needs to be doing things cohesively and in harmony to make sure that everyone is on the same page at the same time doing the same thing. So here's a quick screenshot of one of the Blink processes. So when you're creating a link inside of Blink, we recognize that not every link is the same, but at the same time, you're also creating many links that are the same. I'm always creating certain links to certain places, and I want to make that process streamlined and easy. So as part of that process, as an analytics person, you want to make sure that every link that gets created has all the right tags and attributes associated with it. So as you're going through this, you can choose and filter based on all the different templates that you create, so that when you're choosing your template, it's going to pre-fill different attributes for you, so that either limiting exactly what you can choose from, which ones are required or not, or that they're pre-filled with certain values. So that whole process is similar, but what it does, it ultimately makes sure that everyone's on the same page, creating links the same way, building the same resources, so that the analytics person gets everything that they need. They're getting all the right data with each and every click, each and every scan, so that they're really filling their cup with both quantity and quality. Moving into the compliance side. So compliance is really about owning your own data. So many times our customers come to us and they're using a bevy of different free tools. There are different departments, brands, products, et cetera, that are all going out and essentially procuring their own tools. Sometimes they're free tools. Somebody signs up for an account and they leave and somebody else is left looking for it. So it's really about owning your own data. As a compliance person, it's your responsibility to make sure that your organization owns everything that you're doing, that you really own every touch point with your customers, and that every piece of data you collect is truly yours and owned by you. Second thing is that the empowerment of the compliance piece means that everyone has access. You need to make sure that from a compliance standpoint, that everybody has access to the tools that they need to make sure that they're able to create the data that's needed, but do so in a safe way. And part of the way that you do that is you automate the guardrails. You put the parameters and the pieces in place so that people can move quickly across the organization, but they're doing so with the bumpers on the lane, so to speak. So those guardrails make sure that everyone is able to move quickly and nimbly, but they're able to do so in a process that doesn't break things along the way. Because a lot of these times in these organizations, your customers and your departments throughout, you have dozens, hundreds, thousands of different people who are interacting with and creating these links in the process and the programs, but they need to be able to do so quickly because you can't control everything and all the time. So from the compliance perspective, when you're putting these guardrails in place, they're able to still move quickly, but you have the confidence that they're actually moving with those parameters and the guidelines in place that you've created. So here's a quick example. So we've got ObservePoint here on the top. And so ObservePoint, as we all know, it's highly powerful and highly technical. But at the same time, when you're looking at the values inside of Blink, what we actually do is we extract some of those data points from ObservePoint and load them directly into the Blink platform. So as a compliance person, you want to make sure that people can see exactly what they need to do. So as a marketer, I want to know if the page that I'm pointing to, I don't really always know if that has the right tags on the page. Do I have the right privacy disclosures? Are all the right details there that I need? As a compliance person, I would want my marketers to know that, but a lot of times they don't have access to that information. So by pulling that data out of ObservePoint and putting it inside of Blink, they can see that real time in their links. And if there's an issue with that, as a marketer, I'm now empowered to go and fix that. As a compliance person, I would love that because I don't have to go out and tell you that it's broken. You can see that and you can take ownership and you can correct it yourselves. So being able to take that critical data out of ObservePoint and bring it into this other platform where other people live means that you've empowered them with that data and that access. So the last is the marketers. So marketers are really where most of our customers are. But one of the key things about this is that we need tool alignment. And again, we go back to access, making sure that all the marketers have access to the same information. So that way, a lot of times we find that our customers, when they're rolling out a new tool, they're like, oh, we need 2 seats, we need 5 seats, we need 10 seats. When really they need hundreds or thousands of seats. They want to make sure that everybody has access. So again, it's about democratizing that data, making sure that everyone can have access to the information and all empowered by the same tools. So again, the same thing goes to the next point, sharing the processes. So having the processes, when everybody has access to the same tools, they can have the same processes, they can do the things the same way and create the same links and content and details around that. And then brings us to the third one, which is often overlooked, and that's the postmortem. It's being able to go back and look and see what's working well, what's not working well, but then having the ability to go in and change that. So I can go in and create those the components that will allow me to go in and make changes real time to campaigns that are ongoing. So just because a campaign is in the middle doesn't mean I can't go back and look at what happened in the first part so I can fix it before it's over. So many times we find out that our customers, they don't get data until the end of the month or the end of the quarter that talks about how their campaign is performing, when in reality, they could be looking at the data in real time, make changes, doing those postmortems, not at the end of the campaign, but literally days or weeks after it started to make sure that things are going well. And if not, we're able to make those changes in real time. So again, here's a quick screenshot looking at some of the components inside of Blink. One of the things that we allow you to do is to be able to create the ability to route dynamically based on those links. So here's a quick example that's going to show you based on doing a country-based routing. So if you're coming from France and your language is French, we could route you to one place. If you're in France but your language is English, we could route you someplace else. So one of our customers is Nestle, so they put the same QR code on a cereal box that might go to 16 different countries, and so they can then route that same QR code, goes to different countries based on the country, the language, etc., but it's the same QR code on the same cereal box, all the different locations. So again, imagine being able to do this, but also if you look at all the compliance and security laws across all the different countries, knowing that each one is unique and different, ObservePoint's monitoring and managing all of that, telling you exactly what's working and what's not. But now from a marketing perspective, as I'm rolling this out across all these different countries, I can now see that data for each of my links, and I can make those changes in real time to make sure that I'm staying compliant across all the constantly changing laws across privacy and security. So here's a deeper dive into the Blink and ObservePoint integration. So you can see Blink here, the top screen, this is all Blink, but the yellow columns, those are the ones that are coming directly from ObservePoint. So we're actually pulling in all of this data across every audit. And here's a bit of a zoom. So as you hover over one of the fields here, it's going to show you the last time that we pulled that data. So you can see, again, that real-time information from ObservePoint, pulling that into Blink, again, giving access to that to a broader audience. So a lot of times you have ObservePoint, everyone has access to it. The people there, it's a little bit overwhelming for some of them. They just need a few different data points. In this space, you can actually give them access to exactly what they need. You can turn the columns on and off. You can create custom views. So I can create the perfect view for my audience so that when they're logging into Blink, they can see exactly what they need from ObservePoint alongside exactly what they need for their campaigns, and then make those decisions clearly and crisply in that process. So I'm sure several of y'all were in Sam's presentation yesterday talking about the different value that they've received from having a Blink ObservePoint integration and the ROI that they received. So I wanted to highlight a few of these. Some of you might have missed that, and if you did hear it, I want to resonate it again because there were such incredible numbers to be able to go back and actually tell your organization, here's exactly what we've done. So many times it's difficult to prove the value of investments that you make, or if you want to onboard something, how do you validate that? And so these three key metrics, and there's many others, but these are the three that really jumped out the most, I think had the most impact and really resonated very strongly. So the first one, it all comes down to that ROI. So again, 16.3% return on their overall investment in their tools. So that's honestly a bit unheard of. So it's really exponential in the grand scheme of things. When you look at how do I justify the purchase of this new tool, being able to go back and say we have hard numbers to justify that, that's tremendous. So second thing is reducing the broken link time. So 99%. I don't know many things you can do where you can say I got a 99% savings on anything. But in this case, they did, and they backed it up with data because they have all the information. So that in itself is huge. And then the last one is saving time. We always talk about making more money, saving money, and getting home earlier. And so anytime you can actually save time, if I work more, I can make more, I can save more. But to actually say I did both of those things and I got home earlier, so that's significant. So 622 hours of savings over a single year. And again, as Sam pointed out yesterday, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're starting to move deeper into different groups, so that savings only grows up from there. So hopefully at the end of the day, you're looking like the guy here on top of the mountain that's feeling triumphant based on actually achieving that peak. So as a quick summary, analytics has to be consistent across every campaign that you do across your entire organization, all products, departments, teams, etc. Second, compliance approval on every tool that touches your customer. So if you have a touch point, be it a link, a text message, a QR code, whatever it is, making sure you own that data and you own that touch point. And third, making sure that marketing has access to all the right tools and they can deploy with ease because their moments to react are sometimes fleeting, and so they need to be able to move very quickly. And I'll leave you with that, and I thank you very much for your time.
Great. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I love that case study. There's just such an impact when you can say, here's the real dollars we just saved simply by putting two pieces of information together. If you haven't seen it, there's actually a printout of that case study floating around. I know we handed a whole bunch of them out yesterday during Sam's section, but we're happy to get you a copy of that as well. I'm going to bring up next to the stage Tim Munsell. Tim and I go back a little ways, actually quite a ways in our paths in our careers. But Tim currently is the senior strategist at Drumline, one of our partners, and also used to work with and for us here at ObservePoint. So I brought Tim in because I knew if anybody could just get to the guts of it and really has a ton of experience over many, many years doing some really cool things, Tim would be the guy. So we're going to let him talk about a number of different ways in which he's doing some off-label, off-brand, unpublished. He's got the secret menu of ObservePoint. So Tim, we're going to let you tell us how you're a rock star.
Thanks. Hi. I am... It's not supposed to make that noise. There we go. I'm Tim. So I have been around ObservePoint since 2008, which happens to coincide with when ObservePoint really started. I had the privilege of actually being customer number one. Well, paying customer number one. And then through the years, I've gotten to work for ObservePoint as an employee and consult with ObservePoint as a consultant and partner with ObservePoint like I am now, and having been a customer of ObservePoint. I've been using this stuff for a long time, and I can tell you that this product team is pretty top-notch. We're going to talk about off-label uses. So remember, most of the drugs out there have uses that are prescribed and then uses that it works for also, and sometimes it even works better off-label than it does for what it's been prescribed for. We're going to talk about two different categories. Show me the data, and I need more context. And we're going to go through 6 different use cases. And while we're doing this, we're going to talk about pre-audit actions, on-page actions, the OP custom tag, and the use of the API. This is not going to be super technical. There are technical pieces that if you have questions afterwards, I'm going to suggest that you reach out to Mike or Clint, especially if you saw their action set presentation yesterday. Show me the data. ObservePoint data doesn't need to just sit in ObservePoint. As a user, as a practitioner, my background was in analytics and doing the reporting is how I got into all of this. I learned early on that I could do a lot of reporting on what ObservePoint was scanning. We were Omniture and Adobe users at the time, but then also in Google Analytics. So the setup. It's best practice to block your ObservePoint data from being collected in analytics. Don't redirect it. Put it someplace that you can use it. So a testing report suite, if you're using analytics, or a dev or testing property, if you're using GA. And then I use a query parameter. You can use a bunch of different things, but I use the query parameter, and I happen to like ObservePoint equals, and I'll give it the audit name or the journey name, and then I'll capture that. And if I'm using Adobe, I'll capture that in an EVAR, and it'll just persist through the rest of the visit. Or in GA, I can capture it and then write a cookie and persist it through each of the hits in GA. And then in my configurations, I send this ObservePoint data specifically to that report suite or to that property that I want it to go to if I don't want it in production. But then there are also times that I do want it in production just as a valid check for, okay, data did come through, it just wasn't a customer. It looks like this. You put the parameter on the page that you want to start from, and there you go. Now, you'll note, and I forgot to put the red box, you'll notice that this is looking at 10 simultaneous browsers. If you're going to do more than one browser, you also need to set up a pre-audit action and send each one of those browsers through this, because each one of those browsers is going to be a unique user. And I learned recently while trying to demo this out that those users won't all start at the first page. But you do this, and then in your ObservePoint scan, you can see right here, the ObservePoint parameter shows up on each of the 30 pages that I had scanned using 10 different browsers. With this, you can then, so this uses the pre-audit actions, but with this, now all the ObservePoint data I see all the ObservePoint hits inside of my analytics platform. And that now enables me to do a whole bunch of things. Like, I want to build a dashboard for a marketing campaign that's coming up. It hasn't launched yet. And I'm tired of always using fake data. I want to use real fake data. I want to see what the data comes like when something crawls through my landing pages, hits the buttons, fills out the forms, or doesn't. And so, landing pages with then the various UTMs. And then again, make sure that you're using the pre-audit actions if you're going to be using one browser. In this case, I only used one browser, so it's just going to be one user coming through. And if you have a lot of landing pages, this is a little Google script that actually builds the audit for me. And so I use this with a current customer who has a whole list of a growing list of vanity URLs. And this way we don't need to communicate. They already had a Google sheet that listed those URLs. So we just dropped the script in there. And then one of the things that I love about this is right there, that little piece right there creates a menu button in the Google sheet. So as soon as they're done adding whatever new URLs they have, they just hit that menu button. The audit rebuilds and it continues on its same schedule. Nothing needs to change. Nobody needs to touch it. And then periodically I can go in and just make sure that it's being worked. After the audit setup, now I'll utilize on-page actions for scrolls. If I want to interact with things, if I want to play videos, etc. And I can just make a whole long list of actions. So this one, there's a scroll to the bottom to make sure that I get all the percentage scrolls and confirm what that looks like. And then I can set up a second audit where I don't scroll to the bottom. And so I can see the data coming through and I can start to build out what will the reporting look like? What will the dashboards look like? And then get that verification, the validation from the teams that need to see it for data that's going to really be coming through. Then I'll set up a journey. And the journey will have key conversion points and actions that need to be taken care of. And I'll make sure to set up a journey that doesn't complete things so that all my conversion rates aren't 100%, but I can see some of that. And then with the custom tags and with a little bit of JavaScript magic, if you have a developer that can help you with that, you can begin to randomize a lot of this data as well. So it's not always the same set. The beautiful thing about this, I'll let it run and then let everything run several times so that you have multiple users over multiple days. So you can see what trend lines look like and you can see fallout reports and you can build your funnels and confirm how everything's going to come through. So for that, we're using the pre-audit actions, we're using on-page actions, and then we're also using the API. I want to confirm pipelines. I want to confirm automations. And so I'll set up a journey with the key conversion interactions, and then I'll use real test data. So I prefer a name of don't call. It makes it very clear to whatever poor sales team that winds up with this lead in their pipeline that this is me. And typically I'll have conversations with that team to let them know that this is going to happen. And I started doing this several years ago. It used to be that I would talk to whoever was in charge of the CRM and we would build data in that would automatically be filtered out of the pipeline. And so if it came through with test, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't go anywhere. And then one day I realized that, wait, we can check and confirm that the automations that are built, that the marketing journeys that are built, that all those pipelines continue to work. And we don't have to do it myself every day. And the other one is that number 4, the input, spec the product plus journey at Gmail. So a little hack with Gmail is if you take your name at Gmail and you do plus something at Gmail, you still get the email. And the email is to you plus that thing at Gmail. And you can do that as much as you want. And I use this when I am user testing things. I use this when I am signing up for newsletters and I want to know where they're sending that email to, who they're selling it to. And so you can then filter your email by the to address by those identifiers. And so now for each journey that you are testing the automation on, you can set up rules inside of Gmail, and using that API, you can then trigger alerts if you don't get an email when you're expecting it, or if you're getting more emails than you're expecting. And it also works with your corporate email if you happen to be using a Google Workspace. So using that real test data, then I'll run the journey daily or weekly as needed. And I can go into whatever that system is, and I can confirm that I'm showing up in the contact lists. I can confirm that it's showing up on the prescribed newsletter list. I can confirm that it's being dumped into the deal pipeline or whatnot. And I can confirm that I'm getting the emails that I expect for the marketing automations that we've set up. So your CDP, your CRM, your EMP, your MAP, I went looking for all the acronyms that I could find, and that's what I came up with. That uses a lot of the on-page actions and the action sets. Final show me the data, and I used to do this quite a bit, was confirming the segments that I had, especially some of the more complicated, nuanced sequential segments. Because I'm using ObservePoint with that parameter, I know exactly what data should be there. And so I can build the segment not off of randomized data that I don't really know, but I can build the segment off of a whole series of actions and events that I prescribed specifically. And so knowing that, I can then validate that if this but not that really is if this but not that, and catch what are some of the other very, very small, minute visits that can still show up in that segment. And before I learned this would be these kinds of segments, you take days constantly adjusting that segment. But you had to do that because you didn't know what was supposed to be there, or you didn't know everything that could possibly be there. And so it would be a process of iterate. Did I get everything that I wanted? Did I lose anything I needed? Okay, iterate again. Did I get everything I wanted? Did I lose what I needed? Using this, and because you know the map, it becomes a much faster process for building that segment out, and the iteration process goes much more smoothly. Set up this again using your audits, using your journeys, and document the actions that you took. This will again use the pre-audit actions and the on-page actions and the action sets. So that is how I look at ObservePoint data outside of ObservePoint and use that to help me in my role as an analyst. Oftentimes, in that role as an analyst, you get a lot of questions that aren't captured in your analytics tools. We're going to use a lot of on-page actions for this stuff. And ObservePoint has a whole library of these to start out with. You don't have to start by writing your own. This is just page one of what they've already built. So, how many pages have this thing? Have this form on it? Have this link on it? Have an image? Another great question behind this is, can you confirm that all my pages have this thing? Now, the development team, forever, I always wondered, why can't the development team just tell me that? And then when you have 500 development teams, there's no wonder that you can't just tell me that. So here's an example of newsletter in the footer of a sandbox client that I have. So I'm going to start with the custom tag template. It's right there. And when you open that up, this is what you get. This looks terrible. It looks really hard, and it's not. You need to fill in those three pieces. Two of them are literally just text. And then you can get help from your dev team with that top one. This is what it looks like. This is looking for that newsletter in the footer. I just define that if it's found, I'm going to start with not found. So I just default to, oh, it's not there. And then if it is found, if that selector is there, then it says found. And now it looks like that. The email form was not found on this page. Now, one of the things that's really curious about this is I thought for sure this was going to work. And I was using, I was using an ID. And it turned out, this is a WordPress site, that the ID changes on every single page. And I had no idea that that happened. So I learned something new doing this. So when I switched it to the class, now I look at it and, oh yeah, I scanned 10 URLs. And you can see down there, all 10 URLs have the value of yes found. I didn't have to go look at those URLs. And now I can scan the entire site looking for that, making sure that that's there. The other cool thing about this, and this is not in here, is you can build standards off of ObservePoint variables that you have defined. So that uses on-page actions and the OP custom tag specifically. I need to classify the SEO for all my different pages. It would be really helpful if I knew the impact of bad SEO or good SEO on my pages on the site. If you're not using Adobe, you can create a lookup table that you then use as a data source in Looker Studio or whatever visualization tool that you use. Start with the SEO template. This is another one of those, and this is fully scripted, and there's two of them. There's the basic one, and then there's the more advanced SEO details. The output is going to look something like this, which if you put a little Saint classification header on top, is exactly what Adobe needs to ingest. And so you can export this and then upload it via Saint. But it can also be accessed via API, and you don't ever have to touch Saint again. That uses the on-page actions. Again, it's that custom tag and the OP custom tag, and then the API. A question that I always wondered about, and no one really asked me about, except on very rare occasions, is which pages receive zero traffic. I have thousands of pages on my site. I have thousands of blog posts. Are there any that don't matter anymore? Now, we could go and we could pull server logs, and the already strapped dev team is going to curse you while you ask them for this. Or you can do it yourself, and you can audit and limit to the folder structure that you need to limit it to, or limit it to the site section that you need to limit it to. And then export that in a CSV. And then you export the report from your analytics tool of choice into Sheets or Excel. And then you use a count if, which looks like that. Just count if this page, A2, is in the range of other pages. And then you can sort. And you'll find all your zeros. Although I bet you thought I was going to use a VLOOKUP. Count if is better. And then you sort, and there you go. That's it. Thanks, all.
Thanks, Tim. All right. Wow. I'm gonna put you on the spot though, because no, don't leave the stage. You use the term saint. I haven't heard that in forever. You're gonna be the judge. Does anyone in here know what saint stands for? And you can't have worked for Omniture. Tony. I know. I'm not gonna let you answer. And I'm not gonna let you answer. And Rob, I definitely know this. Saint. Do you guys even know what we're referring to when we say saint? I want to make sure you know what it is. What is it? Yeah, what are you referring to? Yes. So if you heard Saint is the classification engine inside of Adobe Analytics, formerly Omniture Site Catalyst. Saint stands for, John is the one that created the platform. John, what does Saint stand for? The Site Attribute Something Naming Tool. That's close enough, John. So it's Site Catalyst Attribute Import Naming Tool. Yes, we used to have a lot of really weird acronyms over there. Okay, I'm going to bring back up our entire panel. So Lee, Andy, why don't you pop back over? Obviously, there's a lot of specifics gone through. I want to give you as an audience a chance to ask any questions you have. How did you do this? Why is this important? If you don't, I get to start throwing questions. But are there any questions for our panelists? Anything that was covered? Okay. Oh, I'm gonna be the runner. Oh, okay.
So for Tim, the last thing you showed and you said to do the count if. I'm assuming if you're doing a count if, you must have a list of all of the URLs to see which ones actually got hit. How are you getting the list if you're not going to the web dev?
Oh, so I export the list of pages that ObservePoint scans, and then export the pages report and compare those two lists using the count if.
So the idea is which pages can be reached. They're not unreachable.
Yes.
But are not being reached.
Yep. Yeah. The question is, how many pages out there, how many pages do I have on my site that I'm maintaining on my site that nobody visits anymore?
And a little foreshadowing, that's going to be a big part of Rob's session after lunch. So we're going to be hitting on that quite a bit. All right. What other questions do you have? We now have another mic runner in the back. Thanks, Jake. Okay, I'm going to... Oh, yeah, go ahead. Arthur.
Hey, Tim, I have a question. You were doing pre-audit actions where you were scrolling, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, no, on-page actions.
Yeah, on-page actions with scrolling, yeah.
And then it sounded like you were then going into, say, Google Analytics to see the scroll events come through, but couldn't you just be writing rules on the page to make sure those calls are being sent to Google with the right data instead of having to jump between platforms to check the data?
Yes.
Thank you.
Jeff?
So my question's for Andy. The QR code you mentioned about regional differentiation and language. I'm curious a little more detail on that. How granular can you get and how reliable is it? We have regional needs like that where we can publish once and use and guide based on region.
Sorry, what was the second half of that? How granular and
how accurate.
Accurate. Okay. So the granularity, it goes down to either state in the United States or province in Canada. Outside of Canada and US, it's by country. And we do that based on the IP address, the lookup of where that IP address is registered.
Down front. I'll give him this.
Question for Lee. In the tag initiator report, how often have you found false positive and false negatives when digging into how deep those tags go?
It really depends on how honest the marketers are, the marketing agencies are, to be flat honest with you. Like, allow them to say, oh, yeah, well, we're using this product and, we didn't tell you. Some others will say, oh, no, we removed that. But when we go back and then rescan later after we've identified it, and the client will say, hey, can you run this for us again? Then all of a sudden these are gone. So it's more likely that the marketing agencies don't know that their tools are putting in these extra piggybacking pixels. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually got to follow up on that myself because I found out the hard way that every time you use a YouTube embedded video on your website, Google is actually slapping on at least one, if not multiple piggybacks on that, oftentimes Google remarketing. And Lee, when you're looking at this, you talk about incorporating this into your hum assessments. What's the downside of that? If you've got a few tags on a few pages that you didn't know, I think you've referred to them as zombie tags in the past. I call them digital residue, but regardless of what you're referring to them as, what's the downside? What's the impact of it? You still have those things on your site.
So you're talking about the piggybacking pixels?
Piggybacking pixels.
So the big thing is that you can be out of compliance for whether you are financial or health or GDPR, CCPA, and any of these other ones like the guy from Nevada was even talking about. That if you're not in compliance with forgetting those people, they can sue you. So California, for example, if you know anything about CCPA, it not only can the state of California come after you, but the people who you have asked to be forgotten or get rid of their data, do not track them anymore, they can file a civil lawsuit against you, like a class action. So that it's not necessarily, you got tech debt and everything else, and maybe these things can be running and they might be zombie tags out there that they're just rolling. But you also have financial and legal impacts that can happen with piggybacking pixels that you don't know about.
Yep. And I think that's true of both piggyback as well as what you call them retired tags as well.
Oh, yeah,
shouldn't be there and you don't know they are.
Yeah.
All right. So I saw another hand pop up. somebody's shy. I'm actually going to call somebody out. Jake, why don't you give the mic to Sam for a second? I like putting Sam on the spot because she puts me on the spot a lot. Sam, obviously you've worked a ton with Andy and with Blink. As you've gone through that process, is there more that you want out of it? What do you see the future of that being? And maybe if you can put Andy on the spot a little bit to say, where's this all headed? Mic's not on. The other mic?
Okay. No.
Is the green light on? I could just walk over.
On.
Yeah, it's working out.
Is that better?
Magic touch. One thing I was sad not to see was the SMS implications of Blink and being able to leverage that for things like orders and deliveries. So I'd love to hear more about that because that's a space that we're moving into, especially. We also have super highly configured products in our showrooms. And so all of our showrooms in the future, we're hoping to leverage Blink to be able to generate very custom automated QR codes that our customers can scan and learn more. I think I would love to hear more about that. But also, to Cameron's point, if you would love to talk about what's coming in next year, I have seen the roadmap. I get it, Jesus. I do think it's very, very valuable. There's a lot of really good stuff in there.
Thank you. So a few quick things. So SMS, custom QR codes, personalization, and roadmap. So on the SMS side of things, so one of our fastest growing segments is doing personalized messaging. So one-to-one messaging. Again, going back to the idea that every link should be the perfect link. So if you're sending a text message out to 100,000 people, you should be generating 100,000 links. And so we have the capability of doing that very, very quickly. You can do 1 million links in less than a minute, send those out. So whatever that multitude is, being able to create that personal link, there's really no barrier to that other than putting it in place. And again, each one of those, the value of doing that is, if 100,000 people, if there's only 1,000 actually clicked it, you know exactly who clicked it from the standpoint of who that was sent to, the timestamp, how many times they did click it, if it ultimately led in a conversion, what does that look like, et cetera. So it really dials in that personalized messaging and that one-to-one side of things. Same thing on the QR code side of things. So if you're doing, again, be it a mailer to 100,000 different people, doing 100,000 different QR codes. If you're in Sam's case, where you've got a showroom where they have, they know exactly which chair is in which part of the store against which wall that has which covering, coating, color, style, collection, et cetera. They have a very specific QR code exactly for that combination. So when that gets scanned, they know everything about that. And when you start marrying that with other bits of data, that becomes very valuable. So on that aspect of things, being able to create that multitude of different, again, that perfect link that ultimately is embedded in that QR code, which is also dynamic, meaning that you can change that. So if you ever wanted that destination to go someplace else, you're simply changing it in Blink, which then routes it someplace else based on whatever that best value is. You can always do that very easily, not only through the platform, but also through the API in an automated fashion, tag it in with your sales systems and so forth. And then last, in terms of the roadmap, it really gets into really more making dynamic abilities in terms of creating those attributes, creating dependencies, looking at the ability to collaborate better across teams, more access in terms of reporting, being able to create those detailed filters. So I want to be able to dial in those reports based on exactly the attributes that I'm looking for and the details of the market and the segments. So again, ultimately you have that reporting suite that you can really dig into with the access to the people who need it immediately so that you're not overburdening your analytics team, but really empowering them with all those data points across all those components together.
And what I love most about that story is there's actually a third leg to this stool. I mean, we've talked a fair bit about the integration between ObservePoint and Blink, being able to validate all your landing pages, have all of your landing page links in one place. But our friends over at Adobe also know you need to get that information into your analytics platform so you can use all those dimensions about that one chair in that one corner with all those colors to make sure you have your classifications, which are same classifications, all wrapped together. So that's how the whole ecosystem comes together. All right, join me once again in giving a hand to our rock stars, Andy, Tim, and Lee.
That's it.
All right, we're just about to lunch. It looks like it's getting set up behind you. You can probably smell it. In the last couple of minutes, I'm giving you an extra rock star. Not on the slide, but internally, we have some pretty great folks that also know our platform very well. Chief among those is our head of client success, Dylan Sellers. Dylan, why don't you come on up? Dylan runs the team of the folks that you all get to work with on a daily basis. Dylan trains that team, coaches them, and he himself has been in that role, and he knows what it's like to be in front of customers, but also to guide you to those things that maybe you don't know about yet. Maybe there's a ton of power. I like the way Tim put it. They're off menu. They're things that exist that it can do off menu, off label. I think I got that wrong. So we wanted to give Dylan just a couple minutes to highlight a couple of those things and then give you direction on how you can better engage with his team. Dylan?
Thanks, Cameron. Appreciate it. And Kurt, if you could get the display up for my laptop, that'd be great. It's plugged in now. While we do that, just wanted to give a plug for TipJar. How many of you have watched TipJar at least once? Okay, how many of you like it? It's okay, good. All the hands stayed up. How many of you think I look older in person? No one raised their hands. Okay. So TipJar is, really born out of what we felt like was a demand to just share best practices at scale as much as possible. And given I see and I touch a lot of different, customer interactions, and I'm involved use cases, I'm trying to share those best practices. So please, if you have feedback about TipJar, please come talk to me. There's recordings of those, and there's a lot of cool content we have planned coming up soon. Cameron talked about off menu, and I'm also going to just talk about like newly added to the menu, like the chef special. So I'm going to show you a couple things that are just 2 quick things that are brand new. You probably didn't even notice because it's that new. And then I might show you a few off menu things. So one very, very simple one in the context of landing page validation, paid media testing, the Blink room and board case study. We added this new initial and final URL feature, and we now support some more complicated filters and functionality. I just want to make sure everyone's aware of this capability. So let's say, it's a problem at my company where I know this exists, where query parameters are stripped off the URL because there's some kind of redirecting happening after that page is visited. So now you can say, hey, show me all the pages where the initial URL has a query parameter. And you can say, show me all the pages where the final URL has a query parameter. But then you're going to flip the switch. You're going to say the final URL is missing a query parameter. So in this example, this is actually Breeze Airlines, their local airline that's up and coming. And here's an example of a page where that query parameter was it existed in the initial page URL, was contained in the final URL. And I don't know if state is necessarily, that's probably may not be a query parameter associated with a tracking campaign, but you can get more specific. You can say if it contains, UTM source, UTM medium, we could add more complicated, more sophisticated and specific filters, but super easy. And then all I do is click here on the pages scanned alert icon, and I'm going to create a new alert. So yeah, if I find more than 0 pages where this criteria is the case, let me know. So it's such a simple functionality, but I think solves a really big problem in this industry, is just having governance around query parameters and tracking. So I want to call that out. One more that I wanted to share is the new status code, page status code filtering. So you guys are familiar with, you probably have some kind of broken page alert you've set up. And the challenge with broken pages is that there's lots of flavors of broken pages. It's any 0, 400, or 500 level page status code. And there's a whole slew of different server response codes that could be interpreted as. And sometimes, unfortunately, we're working with your security teams to get unblocked. That happens sometimes, is you guys have to permit our traffic to travel, to traverse your site and crawl. And to make sure we don't, we don't cry wolf, we don't set off the false alarm, you can get more specific. And I just love how we've added this. So you can select broken here, but now more specifically, you can say, hey, I just want a 404 page status code on the final URL. And that's our new best practice alert for broken pages. We really recommend we all take advantage of this new filter type, final page status code, focus on those 404 errors first. And there are other 500 level status codes or other server errors you may want to check. But I wanted to call that one out first because this is a very easy win for marketing teams, for people managing content, and for campaigns. Okay. The next thing I want to show you, with the limited time we have, I'll be quick. This is an image an image checking script that we built. So you saw some custom tags today. Custom tags are amazing. And a lot of what we do with custom tags can also be done with console messages and console message alerts. You probably saw that if you came to yesterday's session with Clint and Mike, you saw how you can be even more direct, maybe even save a step. There'll still be applications where you're going to want to use Tim Munsell's method that he demonstrated, but console messages actually can streamline some of those things. And in this case, I'm going to show you a custom tag, but I wanted to call that it could be done in a few different ways. Could be done as a console error message. So this is a super short script, but for those of you who aren't like really technical, let me make this bigger. What this script does is it takes all the images on the page, goes and visits those images, and makes a request to that image. And if that image exceeds a defined size threshold, which in this case we said 0.1 megabytes, if that threshold is exceeded, then we flag it. We say, hey, this is larger than an acceptable threshold. Here's the source URL for that image, and here's the size. So very, very simple. And you might think that this is novel, but thank you, Rob. My battery's slowly dying, so thank you, Rob. You might think this is novel, but I actually wrote this script like 2 years ago. So this capability exists. It always has existed. We're just trying to make sure everyone knows about these kind of niche use cases that could provide a lot of value. Here's another one that's off menu, as Cameron would say. And we want to deliver for more clients. So I can send the script to you. I believe we have a help doc also documented here, but just a powerful use case. Cameron, I know we're almost out of time. Is there any last questions or items?
Thank you, Dylan. Appreciate you coming up. Dylan and his whole team are here to help you. Grab them at lunch. We've got some folks out back at the Genius Bar for the rest of the day. And as always, please reach out. They're here to help you. They want to help you. Their entire life is centered around you and your success with our product.